Hey everyone, Jeff Lee here at AbelCine, taking a look at a pre-NAB special with Jose from Core SWX. Obviously, batteries are the name of the game, but we're going to take a look at what they're going to be announcing and showing at the show, and what you'll be able to take a look at when you're in Vegas. So, Jose, what do you got for us today?
Thanks for having us. So, like you said, we have a little pre-NAB showing of what you can expect to see this week coming up at NAB 2019. So we have our main focus, as always, is power. Mobile power, how you're going to power off all your equipment. We have our new line of batteries called the Helix, still our small form factor batteries. Now we've added a 150 watt hour to that nice little small form factor package that everybody likes. Ideally, what it is the batteries, the Helix line, will work at 14.4 volts, right? It's what everything runs off of. But we're standing here with the LF because focus as of last year has been high voltage and how we're going to power everything, how you're going to get it to actually run for an extended period of time. So the Helix batteries, when coupled with our new mount plates, will go from 14.4 volts to 33 volts and give you the amount of power and the amount of voltage and runtime that you'll need to run things like an LF, a 65, or a Venice, and so forth.
And like you've mentioned already, the fact that it's essentially able to switch from 14 to a 36 volt solution means on a high voltage system, you'd use these batteries, but also on your standard cameras that you've been using forever, the same battery would apply across the board. So you don't need to reinvest in a whole new battery line just if you have like a LF, let's say.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to spend an obscene amount of money on just this is for a high voltage camera. You know, this is a system and a setup and a solution that'll work with your existing Reds, with your existing Sonys and your mini Alexas and things like that, your Amiras. But then when you get these bigger sensor, bigger high voltage cameras, then you have the same exact solution with a different plate that you can either hard mount, or for like the new mini LF that was just announced, we have a rail mount system that goes DC in with a 2-pin Fisher, and then you can go from there. So you can go from the 14.4 volts, or you can switch it to the 33.6 volts. So it'll give you that optimal range to power non-high voltage and high voltage. The other good thing too about the Helix is it'll indicate when it's at 14.4 volts, and it'll indicate when it's at high voltage. You'll actually get an HV indication on the LCD telling you that you're now pulling that higher current.
Right, and that's pretty clever. Obviously, you guys have some additional pins on the plate and the battery in order for the battery to switch into that secondary mode when it is on a high voltage battery plate.
Correct. Yeah, it's not something that's boosting it up. It's actually just the way it'll communicate for the optimal voltage of that battery on the plate to give you the correct voltage. So it's the internal workings of the plate that it does it, not the battery itself. So you can't take that battery and throw it just on an LF. With a non-high voltage plate. So when it's coupled with our plate, that's when you'll get the 33.3 volts.
And obviously, the idea of being able to dual purpose is very important. But I think the other interesting idea with these batteries is that you don't need to have a high voltage camera system to take advantage of the high voltage capabilities of the battery. Right, and that goes into the idea of whether it's pulling more amps or more versus more voltage. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Correct. Yeah. So with the high voltage batteries, with the new Helix system, you're going to future-proof yourself for any other brand manufacturer that comes out with a high voltage series, right? Because that kind of looks like where we're headed with just 3 big cameras coming out in the last year or so, with the most new one being announced. So when you have this capability, you're actually gonna, and the battery's running at 14 volts instead of, let's say, the 24 or a 30, you're gonna get more efficient runtime out of that battery. So it can take that higher, the accessories, the more beating, let's say, and just last as long as it's supposed to, as opposed to where you take a non-high voltage battery, you throw it on one of those cameras with a high voltage plate, another manufacturer that, let's say, it works, but since it's not a high voltage battery, now you're just going to drain it and you're just going to diminish your battery life a lot faster than what it's supposed to be. So ideally, you're going to get the efficient runtime from the high voltage Helix line that you need to sustain for a long period of time.
So it's about longevity, it's about wear and tear on the battery system, it's about, I guess, the solder joints and the cabling, and heat dissipation, I guess, is another big concern. We're talking about power.
Yeah. So non-high voltage batteries will get, you're just going to start cooking back there. So the heat's going to get up really, really, really high, which is just dangerous for anyone, as well as just the batteries, chemistries and things like that. But the high voltage line, you don't have to worry about that heat. So it's a lot safer and just a lot more efficient.
And of course, there's a new display, which is really nice, really easy to read, very just sort of.
Yes. Yep. So just like you just touched, we actually just we switched to a new LCD. A lot easier to read. You still get your down to the minute runtime, so it'll tell you in hours and minutes, as well as a new pie chart, let's say. So it's pretty cool because it's the way it's angled. You have your pie, which is just it gives you a percentage dead on the center, and then you have a cool looking little pie chart that just gives you in increments of how much runtime you have left. Yeah.
So aside from cameras, of course, these types of batteries, the Helixes, will be great for things like high draw lights, perhaps. So you guys have.
So that's the other benefit of having the high voltage batteries with high voltage plates. You can actually use it on, let's say, any of the high big sky panels or things like that, or the any studio lighting, set lighting that draws 24 volts or up. You can use it. It won't run it in series; it'll run it in parallel. So the batteries will just last longer.
Okay, so touch on that a little bit if you don't mind. So running them in series, which I think there are some third-party plates that might be coming out to do that, versus running them in parallel, the ability of things like hot swapping play into it, right?
Yeah. So when you run them in series, you're going to run the battery as one, right? So and that's because it's a non-high voltage, has to join them together to get the actual voltage, right? So when you run them in parallel, you can actually just power the light with one battery, as opposed to powering it with two at the same exact time. So like you mentioned, you can actually throw two batteries on there and then hot swap. So it'll draw specifically from one battery. When that one diminishes and it's no longer being able to use it, it'll switch to the next one, and you can just come out, take that battery off, and put on a new one. So you're always running, and you don't have to worry about the light actually shutting off on you mid-shot or anything like that.
Great, very cool. So you mentioned the obviously onboard battery plates, the batteries themselves, the offboard for things like the LF Mini and the original Alexa Mini as well. But you also have a Venice plate as well. And can you describe a little bit what that does?
Yeah, so the Venice plate is VMount, either VMount to 3-stud or VMount to VMount. Direct Connect, it has a pass-through with the LEMO connection, and when you plug that in directly to the Venice, you'll then get your 24 volts, so then you can run our high voltage batteries off of it as well, or any other battery, and then you'll have two LEMO connections up top for additional accessories and things like that. So it directly mounts to the Venice, and then you can just pass it right through the power on the 24 volt step bypass.
Very cool. Yeah, this is really exciting. I know batteries are one of those things that it's a fundamental piece of the kit that no one likes to think about until you're in a world of hurt and you don't have the power solution for it. So it's really great to see these innovative solutions from Core, obviously to solve the current problem of high draw cameras like the LF, but also looking at sort of future-proofing everyone's kit, because batteries are one of those things that you'll always need. Whenever you upgrade, if you do that, you're still going to need a battery to power everything. So
you got to power everything off. I mean, nothing's solar powered, so it's always the last thing people think of, but it's one of the most important, crucial parts of the production. Can't power anything, we're not going to, film or produce anything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, really thank you for joining us today at this kind of pre-NAB look. Obviously, make sure you check out the Core booth if you're at the show. If you're not at the show, make sure to check out the Able channel for additional coverage. But we're really looking forward to seeing these. Actually, one last question before we go: when are these shipping? Are they? Do you have a ETA on the shipping days?
Yeah. So the Helix 9s will be shipping end of April. 150 is a little bit longer than that, but Helix 9s will be ready to go right after NAB. You can go to our website at www.coreswx.com or just check them out here at AbelCine.
That's good. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And all right, that's it for now. We'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.